They met when they were just 16, strangers who sat on the same bench by the lake every Friday evening. Neither spoke the first few times. She was always sketching. He always had headphones in, nodding to music only he could hear. One day, it rained. Still, they showed up. She offered him half of her umbrella. He offered her one of his earbuds. From then on, they shared more than just silence and space. Music, drawings, secrets, laughter. They once danced barefoot in the grass nearby, soaked in rain and joy. He taught her how to play a few chords on his guitar. She drew their hands intertwined in the corner of her sketchbook and wrote the date under it. One winter, they built a tiny snowman on the bench and gave it headphone wires and a mini pencil. Another time, they lay on the bench under the stars, her head resting on his chest, tracing constellations with their fingers. He whispered his favorite lyrics to her, and she replied by sketching them into the sky with her word. She baked cookies and surprised him one autumn evening. They shared them while wrapped in the same scarf, giggling when crumbs fell into their laps. He once brought her a paper boat with a heart drawn on its sail and said, "If I had to cross 1,000 lakes, I'd still find my way back to this bench." One spring, he brought a tiny speaker and played their favorite playlist as they watched the sunset. She painted the lake in watercolors that day, capturing not just the scenery, but the way he looked at her, like she was his entire world. They wrote letters to each other and hid them under a loose stone beneath the bench. Years later, the letters were still there, weathered but full of love. Each one was a piece of their growing hearts. On her birthday, he scattered flower petals from the path to the bench, where he waited with a cupcake and a candle. She cried and said, "This is where I grew up, with you, right here." He once surprised her with a night picnic under fairy lights he strung in the nearby trees. She gasped when she saw it, pillows, candles, and soft music playing. They fed each other strawberries and whispered dreams about their future home, the family they hoped to build, the kind of old couple they'd be. During a chilly autumn evening, she handed him a sketch she'd worked on for months, every season they'd shared together at the bench. In the last panel, she'd drawn the two of them older, still sitting side by side. He couldn't speak, only kissed her forehead and held her tight. One time, they placed a lock under the bench, engraved with their initials and a tiny heart. "It's not a bridge," she said with a giggle, "but it's ours." One summer evening, he scattered candles in jars along the lakeside, lighting a path to the bench. She followed them, barefoot, the light flickering in her eyes. When she arrived, he was holding a bouquet of wild flowers, the kind she once said reminded her of childhood. They danced to the sound of the water lap, gently, his hands around her waist, her head against his shoulder. Another time, they made a tradition of writing a short poem each time they visited. Some were silly, some were deep. All of them became a journal hidden beneath the bench in a waterproof tin box they called their love time capsule. Once, he learned to sketch just to surprise her. It wasn't perfect, but he drew the bench, her sitting there, and a tiny version of himself looking at her with stars for eyes. She framed it. Years passed. College came, then jobs, then life. The bench sat quietly, collecting leaves and waiting. But they never forgot. One summer evening, now in their late 20s, they returned, hand in hand. On the back of the bench, he'd carved something years ago when she wasn't looking. "If you're reading this, I fell for the girl with the sketchbook," she smiled, teary-eyed. He knelt down with a ring. The bench cheered in sunlight.